It takes it can take years, and then of course there are those who never get caught. Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison emphasized that Heuermann is a demon that walks among us, a predator that ruined families. If not for the members of this task force, he would still be out on the streets today. And I know that's true. These people put in hundreds and hundreds of hours. I don't know if this is a little side note too. I don't know if you know this, but police officers, investigators, FBI, Secret Service, they have a very, very high rate of divorce. And that is attributed to the fact that they're basically married to their job. They will be gone for days and days and days, 24 hours a day working on these things, and not see their family maybe once every 2 weeks or something. It is that it's that intensive, and it causes a lot of families to break up. So I appreciate investigators. I appreciate people who dedicate their lives to those things, because they're exchanging their career for perhaps a normal family life, and that's sad. Nature of the beast, I guess. I mean, if you know you're going to marry someone that's an investigator, maybe you can accept that they're not going to be there all the time. A lot of people can't. That's why they just have a very high rate of divorce. Okay, so according to the court documents made public on Friday, Heuermann faces both first and second degree murder charges over the deaths of Melissa Bartholomew, Amberlynn Costello, and Megan Waterman. And he's also the prime suspect in the 2000 murder of Maureen Brainerd Barnes. All four women were described as sex workers who had contact shortly before their disappearances with a person using a burner cell phone, and were found in close proximity to each other, similarly positioned and bound. So in this case, we have a burner cell phone that's attaching these victims with a similar position and similar method of death. After a new push to review evidence from the case last year, investigators were able to zero in on Heuermann as the main suspect after they were able to find a vehicle an eyewitness had seen in the home of one of the victims the day before they disappeared. The truck, a first-generation black Chevrolet Avalanche, had been registered at the time of the murders to a Long Island man who matched the physical description a witness had given of a man seen at that same victim's home attempting to solicit her. Investigators then subpoenaed cell phone data records that allowed them to link him to calls made to and from the victim's phones near both Heuermann's home in Massapequa Park and his office in Midtown Manhattan. He's guilty. I'm joking. Man, that's some good evidence, though. That's some good evidence. Doesn't mean he killed him. But it does mean they have evidence that he had communication with them. And even they do have, an eyewitness that identified his vehicle. So that's some damning evidence. The women's own phones provided ominous clues to their fates. A final cell tower ping near Heuermann's residence, a voicemail checked by the expressway, and taunting calls to one victim's family members using her own phone from near Heuermann's office. Here's how the bail application filed Friday by prosecutors detailed the cell phone data related to Melissa Bartholomew. On July 3, 2009, Miss Bartholomew was contacted by a burner cell phone. Therefore, the Bartholomew cell phone was contacted by this burner cell phone on July 6th, July 9th, and July 10th, which was the last day she was seen alive. On July 10th, cell site records indicate the burner cell phone traveled from Massapequa Park to Midtown Manhattan. Later that evening, the Bartholomew cell phone traveled from Midtown Manhattan to Massapequa, with the last cell site location being in Massapequa on July 11th at approximately 1:43 a.m. On July 11th, 2009, Mrs. Bartholomew's cell phone was used to make an outbound call, checking her voicemail from a cell site located in Freeport. On July 11th and 12th, the Bartholomew phone made 2 more outbound calls, checking her voicemail from cell site locations in Babylon. On July 17th, 23rd, August 5th, August 19th, and August 26th, the Bartholomew phone made taunting phone calls to Miss Bartholomew's family members, some of which resulted in a conversation between the caller, who is a male, and a relative of Melissa Bartholomew, in which the male caller admitted killing and sexually assaulting Mrs. Bartholomew. The cell site locations of the Bartholomew phone during these taunting calls were all in Midtown Manhattan. Do you think you'll ever speak to her again? The caller asked Bartholomew's teenage sister in a bland, calm voice in one of the calls in July of 2009, according to the New York Times. And when she told the caller that she hoped to talk to her sister again, he replied that he had killed her after having sex with her and then hung up. Investigators said in their court filing that Google data also revealed Heuermann repeatedly searched for news about the case, such as, why could law enforcement not trace the calls made by the Long Island serial killer? And 8 terrifying active serial killers we can't find. He allegedly sought out podcasts about the murders, as well as photos of the victims' families. Prosecutors also have evidence that the alleged killer conducted thousands of searches related to sex workers, sadistic, torture-related pornography, and child pornography, including porn involving 10 to 13-year-old girls. With Heuermann in their sights, investigators sought out a DNA sample via his trash, eventually recovering the crust in a pizza box he threw away in Manhattan, and then comparing the DNA from that to the DNA of a piece of hair recovered from one of the victims' bodies. Hey, and you know if it matched. That's damning evidence. That's crazy. So who is he? We know he's 59. He was arrested in Midtown Manhattan on Thursday night. Married, father of 2, lives in Massapequa Park. He's an architect and is the founder of RH Consultants and Associates Incorporated, a Manhattan-based architecture firm that has worked with city agencies as well as other clients, such as Catholic Charities and American Airlines. A 2022 interview with Heuermann about his life and experiences as an architect can be found on YouTube. Ooh, I'm going to have to look it up. In the clip, Heuermann describes himself as someone born and raised on Long Island who's been working as an architect since 1987 in Manhattan. Pix 11 News spoke to Damian Richards, an employee of Heuermann's who was hired in 2020, who was taken aback by the news that his boss had been arrested in connection to the brutal crime. Shocked, total shock. At first the shock of hearing this, then obviously the next thing comes to mind. What happens to my job and my family? He told the network. On his boss's personal nature, he added, I've never witnessed him to be violent, but he gets aggravated. This industry is a roller coaster ride. Now that follows some of the characteristics of serial killers, right? Although getting aggravated at your job is not unusual. Interesting. In 2010, authorities were looking. This is how the case began. In 2010, authorities were searching for Shannon Gilbert, a 23-year-old New Jersey woman who had gone missing on Long Island, when they discovered the bodies of 4 women in burlap sacks, 500 feet from each other, near a parkway by Gilgo Beach on Jones Beach Island, a barrier island on Long Island's South Shore. All 4 women, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Bartholomew, Costello, and Waterman, were later determined to have been strangled to death. Gilbert's body was found in 2011, as were the remains of another 4 people across the remote area between 2010 and 11, including 2 more women, a man, and a female toddler. And it's not clear if or how some or all of these cases may be linked, but police have believed that some were the work of a single serial killer. Gilbert's death, which was never ruled a homicide, was later deemed by law enforcement to be unconnected to the murders of the so-called Gilgo 4, though Gilbert's family members continue to believe the cases were connected. At the time of their deaths, all 5 women were sex workers, we know that, and advertised the escort services on Craigslist, which is why they also call this the Craigslist killer. In 2011, New York Times spoke with relatives of 5 women about their quest to find justice. The quote is, Can says the police have failed to take her sister's case seriously, beginning with the first officer she spoke to. As soon as I told him what she was doing up in Manhattan, it was like he didn't care. She speaks of the fruitless trips her husband and brother took to New York to try to find Maureen themselves, the 2.5 years it took to even get Maureen's name onto the National Registry of Missing Persons. She tells me she got her sister's emails, texts, and phone records herself trying to retrace Maureen's steps. I've been driving myself crazy for 4 years trying to figure out what happened to my sister, she says. I drove myself to the point where I didn't want to get up in the morning and brush my teeth. I didn't want to go to sleep. I just wanted to figure out where my sister was. I got fired from my job. I was like, I can find another job, but I can't find another sister. Going on with my life, felt guilty. And that is another very interesting point that she makes. It has traditionally been, I'm not going to say everywhere, I'm just saying that it's in a lot of cases that you see police officers will not take too seriously anybody who's a sex worker. And I know these people are adults. Typically they're adults, and, you don't know if they're a missing person where they just leave on their own because, we're adults. We're in America. We're free to go and leave if we want to. But in many, many cases, in most cases, I'm going to say, these women are victimized because they are part of that population that's the most vulnerable. And they're desperate in many cases. That's why they're doing that. So it makes them a prime target for any violent crime. That's for sure. So interesting. I just would really push for any law enforcement agencies to take seriously any family member that calls. It doesn't matter if they were prostitutes or not. It doesn't matter. They're still a human being. They're still a person who did not deserve to die. If, of course, they are a victim. They also have the right to just move around and go wherever they want to and not tell anybody. And I know that that's where that fine line is with police. When does it turn into a missing person? When does it stay a missing person? When do you decide that it is probably someone who's dead, or someone who's been victimized? So there's a lot of reasons why, I'm sure, and different precincts would have different rules and regs about that. So I'd be interested to look into that at some point. But I just feel like it really doesn't matter what someone's vocation is. If they're a victim of anything like this, or anything, they deserve to be treated with respect, just like anyone else. So, all right, so that's all we have today on Heuermann, but I guarantee you in the next few weeks we're going to learn a ton more, and I'll give it a few weeks and then I'll do an update, because I think we will definitely find out some early childhood. I know he's 59 years old. I don't know that his parents are still alive, but I guarantee you they're going to talk to some of his schoolmates, and I hope they go pretty far back as they can, to see what his childhood was like, perhaps, because that's going to be important to me. I want to know what did it look like. Why is he the man he is today, if he is in fact guilty? So tune in for that, of course. And if you have any questions or comments, thoughts about Heuermann in this case, let me know. Remember, you can email me at drkimberlycassidy89@gmail.com. You can check out my website, compositionofakiller.com, and my Facebook page, which is also Composition of a Killer, and my personal page, which is just Kimberly Cassidy. All this information is typically on there, or